Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. In his recent Mann Ki Baat broadcast, the Prime Minister spoke about India's startup boom and he spoke about the post-COVID enlargement of India's unicorn club of startups. He said that India has as many as 70 unicorns, which are defined as startups with a valuation of $1 billion and above. And as the Mint says, the Prime Minister hailed the vibrancy of a space, which is the startup sector space, which frequently resets its own investment records, referring to the massive investments that it has attracted. The Prime Minister said that it is true that this is the era of startups. And it is also true, he said, that in the world of startups, India is leading in a way today. To us, while it is true that India witnessed a boom in investments in startups in 2021 with a record inflow of funds in it. But then, to us, it is also true that India's case worldwide was no exception. With the world awash with surplus funds coinciding with fewer investment opportunities in shrinking economies available, every country with a startup ecosystem witnessed a record rush of funds into startups in 2021. The recent Hurun research report, which published the Global Unicorns Index 2021, says that 2021 was the most successful ever year for unicorns because of an investment frenzy which pushed up valuations for all of them. The report says that in 2021, there were 1,058 unicorns globally, almost double the 586 unicorns which were there in 2020. Though India has 54 unicorns, it however remains far behind the US and China, which take the top two global spots, and they are way ahead of the rest of the world with 487 unicorns in USA and 301 unicorns in China respectively. With 54 unicorns, India looks small as compared to USA and China. Some of the highlights of this report about startups in India are worth looking at. The report says that in the matter of unicorns, India has overtaken the UK in 2021 to now rank as the third in the world with 54 unicorns. It then says that Bengaluru has more unicorns than cities like Boston, Palo Alto, Paris, Berlin and Chicago, with a tally of 28 such companies, which happens to be the seventh largest in the world. The report further says that Indians have founded 65 unicorns outside India, mainly in the Silicon Valley, USA, of course showing that there seems to be a better environment there. It mentions that Byju's and InMobi Technologies are India's most valuable unicorns with valuations of $21 billion and $12 billion respectively. Byju's is in fact now the 15th most valuable unicorn worldwide, while InMobi is the 20th most valued one in the Global Unicorn Index that Hurun published. India has 15 unicorns, it says, in the e-commerce space, which is the third largest number after USA and China in the e-commerce space worldwide. This Hurun report stands confirmed by data from the Indian VCC Circle, whose data and research platform VCC Edge says that investors have minted 42 unicorns in India in 2021 and that these unicorns have raised about $12.5 billion in fresh capital this year. The 2021 capital markets data for funding related to startups has been encouraging, and its emerging trends indicate that India's startup ecosystem is on the way to becoming a global hub for innovation and for emerging entrepreneurs. Not only did startups manage to raise tons of fresh capital in 2021 in India, but even the early stage investors managed to get tons of money through investment exits from startups in 2021, which shows the maturing of this sector in India. The capital markets data says that startups in India raised $36 billion from private funding in 2021, and of them, 43 became unicorns. It then says that of the $24 billion raised by companies through IPOs, the share of startups was $6 billion, as some of the biggest tech startups of India like Zomato and Paytm hit the capital markets last year. And going by the prospectuses filed by the likes of startups such as Delivery, Pharma Easy, Oyo, Ola, Snapdeal, etc., the fundraising by startups in the capital markets will continue in 2022 and beyond too. They seem to be the new entities which are investing investor capital from the primary and the secondary markets. Even the startup giant Baiju, the EdTech company, is in talks to raise about $4 billion from the public through the SPAC route. The data then says that the investment exits to early stage investors in startups, whether through IPOs or mergers and acquisitions or through secondary market sales, etc., went up by 8 times last year to touch $9.5 billion as against a mere $1.2 billion that it touched in 2020. Such exits reinforce the confidence and interest of investors in startups, and the sector gets further investments into it in due course. For example, the $4.7 billion merger of PayU and BillDesk in 2021 gave an exit fund of $2.2 billion to the investors, and those included giants like Temasek, General Atlantic, and TA Associates. It further and finally says that investors raised about $4 billion in 2021, even through strategic exits from startups in India. To us, the present startup boom in India is a reflection of India's deep scientific and technical talent. It is a reflection of the compelling entrepreneurial forays of the educated in an environment in India where jobs are scarce and people have no choice but to be on their own. And it is a reflection of the fact that due to the fast-paced technological developments and scientific innovations worldwide, old ideas are yielding to new ones, whether in the sectors of banking, fintech, education, logistics, travel, or any field of activity and living. Startups are also emerging and growing because of less government interference in this sector, according to the Commerce Minister Shri Piyush Goyal. Speaking at a seminar, he said that the less the government interferes in the startup ecosystem, the more potential startups will have to become successful. A candid confession, we think, as far as government interference in any segment or any sector is concerned. He further says that look at the IT sector. According to him, the IT sector is successful because the government has no role to play in it. Allowing entrepreneurs to operate with less amount of government interference or involvement, according to him, will help them to come up with cost-effective and affordable solutions and to improve their quality and their designs. The minister further says that if we really want to let this ecosystem grow and go to great lengths, then we have to let it work on its own, let it be on its own. The less the government interferes in the startup ecosystem, the more potential it will have to become successful in the country. Mr. Piyush Goyal then remarks that if he takes the list of unicorns in India, almost none of them have taken government support to become what they are. He mentions that today we have the startup ecosystem across the length and breadth of India. And he points out that with over 45,000 registered startups, India has the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. To us, the fact is that the origins of a typical startup lie in the unorganized sector because they are generally funded by family and friends at the inception, and thus they become too small for the government to formulate a law or set up a regulator. And a law and a regulator typically suffocate the growth in any sector, with telecom and power being prime examples of what government interference by way of regulation and regulator can do to kill the prospects of any sector and of any entity. An entity that originates in a garage, like in the case of a typical startup, is often too small to be regulated, which explains why there has been little government interference in startups so far. But then, the journey of Indian startups from small to scale up, as they say, or from tiny to big, is too tough. And that's because government interference by way of unending laws and heavy compliance invariably sets in as soon as growth sets into these entities. As soon as a startup grows and starts recruiting by the hundreds and starts attracting investment by the hundreds of crores, the advantage of the so-called government non-interference, as Mr. Piyush Goyal says, is lost immediately. And we see that in the case of entities, startups like Ola, Oyo, Paytm, etc. So the lack of government interference in the startup ecosystem in India did not happen because of any conscious government decision or policy. The government has only sought to give tax offs to startups to support their growth, but these become insignificant once a startup begins growing. Moreover, startup technology at times is just another mode of doing the same business. For example, as we see in the case of e-commerce. And therefore, there is no exemption or there is no exception given to them for any registration, any licensing, any regulation or regulator by virtue of which governments tend to interfere in their businesses. And the same business laws apply to a startup too, as would apply to any other entity in that segment or that sector. Moreover, even the smallest of entities, whether startups or otherwise, are subjected to harassment, corruption by all government departments, including income tax, GST, etc. Startups get no exemption or exception out of it. They get the same harassment. However, if there is no government interference in the startup sector, as Mr. Goel says, the government gets little credit for it, and that claim of so-called non-interference applies to small entities only, as we discussed. The government interference catches up with them as soon as they start growing, and very soon, all the laws of the land in all ferocity apply to them. While the funding trends for startups are good and encouraging, it is too early to conclude anything according to us on the basis of the 2021 deals. 2021 was an extraordinary year with excess global liquidity chasing the most speculative investments, as we see the unreal boom in the stock markets or the frenzy in the crypto markets and the cryptos. It has been a year of humongous easy money, which has driven up the deals and the valuations of the startup entities, as we see also in other entities in the stock markets. Reality to us will dawn when the money supply recedes, when many a startup collapse because of their inability to become profitable to survive, and when the furious march of technology makes the present startups themselves obsolete and unviable, as can happen with the fintechs, startups in particular. No Indian startup has succeeded truly in this journey from startup to scale up for want of world-beating ideas or world-beating innovations or technology, which has created global behemoths like Google, Facebook, etc. We really do not have any Indian entity or any Indian startup which has become a giant. The startups gold rush of 2021 will stop when the copious and easy funding of 2021 stops, leading to the widespread collapse of unviable, unprofitable startups, which would anyway not have survived, or they would anyway not have been funded if there was no investor frenzy of the likes we saw in 2021. So 2021 was a good year for startups, but it was not just for India, it was for startups worldwide. The question is, will this continue in the coming years? And to us, that would depend on how is the overall ecosystem of India in the matter of startups. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.